Welcome, everyone. Can you just let me know if you're hearing me well? I can hear myself, but I'm going to look out for y'all in the comments to just approve that. I think everything's going well. Excuse me. I am Monique, and this is a new live stream series that I'm starting. I'm starting a lot of series, by the way. So I thank you all for joining me and tuning in and just kind of keeping up with all the changes. This is a series I'm calling Office Hours, even though it's a bit more like a wind down. But Office Hours just kind of sounds a little bit, more professional. And with this series, I'm just going to be joined by my friends in various capacities to just have like a more chill conversations about topics that mean a lot to us. So for starters, I've also started this Ask Me Anything series you've been seeing on social media, and people have been sending a lot of good questions. And I started off that with just like, I received the question about, is the fact that I'm not in LA hurting my search for a job in the animation industry? So, as you all know, I'm East Coast based and I've been working in the industry. But the studio where I got my start, Blue Sky, is no longer, got shut down. And I was able to work remotely. Well, I was actually able to work in person on an East Coast based Netflix production. And then with COVID, things happened with that. That got paused. And I was working remotely on another film. And then I left from that second film to a third film. And we were doing this whole virtual production thing with that. So when that film got canceled, I definitely did find myself like in this really weird place about like, ooh, do I finally have to like make the pilgrimage out to LA? Can I still do what I want to do and stay on the East Coast? Like, all that sort of stuff, just trying to figure it out. So this conversation has been a long time coming, but I felt like it's happening at the perfect time. Wait, let me see. Oh, everything's good. Yeah, so I think it's happening at the perfect time because one, we're all available. We are one woman down, but Jaren, we love you, and we know you and Black Paper Party are doing amazing, amazing things. So you're here in spirit with us if we don't see you in the comments because we never know with you. But maybe if this conversation happened last summer, maybe it wouldn't be as good as it is now. But I'm not going to hold you any longer. I'm going to bring up my guests and my friends now. So welcome, Deborah. You are muted, but please introduce yourselves, kind of whoever wants to go first. And as you can see, all of our social media handles are here, so you can at us, you can follow us, and also, yeah, put your questions in the chat as you have them, and we're gonna answer them kind of towards the end. So yeah, go ahead, take it away, ladies.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jen. I was also at Blue Sky Studios. That's how Monique and I met. We were both in Story together as PAs. I left before the studio shut down, though. But during that time, I actually went back to school and I wrote for a while for Cartoon Brew, the animation news website that it seems very polarizing to people, but I had a good time there. And I also taught as well in an animation, like a university. And meanwhile, my husband, this is like going to come up. So just like full disclosure, he was also at Blue Sky, and then he was there when it shut down. So then when it got shut down, um, he was working at a different studio, and then eventually we moved out here. Again, we'll get into all of that later. But right now, I'm at Warner Brothers in development over there, and I'm having a fun time.
Hello, I am Deborah Anderson, the Black woman animator, and I am professionally a 3D modeler. And I most recently worked as a production coordinator and then an assistant editor on the last production at 6 Point Harness. And then I have a YouTube channel called Black Woman Animator, where I interview disenfranchised animation professionals. And yeah, that is me.
Right. So, I mean, Deborah, I feel like you kind of, what's good about your channel is that you find people that most of us just kind of like didn't know existed, or you find people that it's kind of just amazing how you even get in contact with some of the people, like the lengths that I'm sure you go to get people to respond to you, and just how you end up either in their DMs or their email inboxes, or maybe you even see them in person. It's just quite impressive.
Yeah.
So wait, do you want to?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of a guided discussion. Collectively, we came together with a bunch of topics. We did like a brain dump, and it's just kind of going to go in clusters. So the first thing that we have here is the whole work from home, return to work, hybrid situation that we've all witnessing. Like we're seeing exceptions being made for more senior artists that they're able to still work remote. However, it seems like production management has to go back in office and still conduct these virtual Zoom, whatever Google Meet calls for individuals that are not there. What has been your thoughts about that? Also, the caveat of relocation is often offered to artists and not to production management people. So, it could be easier to think about making a big move when there's going to be some either financial assistance, or if they're going to put you in contact with realtors or just people to help you with your home search and getting stabilized in that way.
Mhm.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on some of that stuff?
I mean, I know for me, it's been very interesting because again, like I did do the move. Like I'm in LA right now, and one of the things that helped us was again, he's going to come up a couple times because there's certainly a privilege to having a partner through all of this. Um, was because of the title my husband has. When he got the job after Blue Sky shut down, we he got relocation assistance, so we got money to help us move and do the cross country thing. We decided to drive because we just I don't know we thought it would be fun. It wasn't. It was because we were in a bit of a rush too. I was gonna say if it's like try to negotiate your start date later. I'm jumping a little ahead with like pro tips.
That's fine.
Um,
That's fine. That's
yeah,
good.
we had to like kind of really gun it across the country. He had to take like unpaid time off because he didn't have enough vacation accrued. And at the time I didn't have a job yet. Um, I literally got my current job like on the road trip somewhere in Ohio. So I moved without anything, but I knew if he wasn't in the picture, as someone who's a PA or a coordinator, you don't get relocation assistance. You don't get any of those kind of perks. And it's been interesting, like having friends who have gone to other studios and stuff. And it's like, they'll companies will literally have movers come in, pack their stuff, put them in a hotel, and then I remember when Blue Sky shut down, I had access to all of the resources, all the job hunting, because the Blue Sky team did a really great job trying to like help set up like meet and greets with different companies and things. And they had spreadsheets, and it was like every single spreadsheet, it was like, relocation assistance. And it was like, yes, for everybody. And then it was like all the production management is like, no. I was like, the people who get paid the least and need it the most. Deborah, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. I didn't move here with any help. Like I didn't even move here with a job, so I didn't have the privilege of having relocation assistance either because I am a talented 3D modeler, as you can tell by my background, but I'm not that talented to get like a job from New
That's
Orleans
real.
before I moved. So I had to kind of make the decision, and I'm single, so I kind of had to make the decision myself. Um, Los Angeles / California was not on the list at first because I was like, I'm too old to be poor. But somebody else convinced me to put it on the list. I didn't convince myself to put Los Angeles on the list. I was trying to go to like Charlotte or something. But I ended up here, and yeah, I did all the things to get here. I guess we'll discuss at some point.
Yeah, I guess I want to talk about because both of you relatively recently moved, I would say within the last 3 years. I think, Deborah, you came up on your 3-year anniversary, right?
Yeah, on February 8th.
Yeah, and Jen, you're coming up on your year.
No, I'm like a year and like 3 or 4 months now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I guess what took you so long? Both of you to do it. Like well, Jen, you said that your husband got the job or whatever, but there was still a bit of, is it like hesitation or resistance, or like what was stopping you from going forward?
Mm.
I guess I'll start. There was never a plan to live anywhere else but New Orleans. I actually thought New Orleans was going to be my forever city,
Mm.
and so when I moved there after college, that was the plan. But then after 12 years, minus 2 years in South Korea, of like trying to make it work, it just wasn't working. And so I feel like in adulthood, there is a thin line between persist and pivot.
Ooh,
So
I love
like
that.
people are like, don't take no for an answer, but you gotta realize when it's like just for real no. Like just do something else.
Mm.
And so I was working for the state of Louisiana for 5.5 years, and I job searched for 4.5 years.
Mm.
And there were like positions that I applied for. You know how like with women, some of us like have this thing where if it's 10 bullet points, we feel like we have to have all 10, and if it's like 5, we're not applying. There was positions I applied for where I literally fit all 10 bullet points, and I was not getting interviews.
Mm.
Partially because living in Louisiana, you find out that those companies can be racist. So that seems like the only reason I wasn't getting interviews for like 3 separate positions that I continually applied to over and over and never got an interview. So I, you know, I was having a horrible time like at my job, and I was commuting 110 miles a day from New Orleans to Baton Rouge for 5.5 years. So I couldn't find another job. I was like, okay, I want to move to a place where I don't have this issue. Like if I don't like something about my job, I can get another one. And again, initially I wasn't trying to move to LA. So I was doing research on all these other places, and I was like, I also wanted to move somewhere because because we're in a predominantly white industry. I wanted to move to a place where I can opt out and find my people. So that meant I was not moving to Austin, Texas. And that meant I was like, well, I didn't want to move to Seattle because of rain, and I don't want to be depressed. And then like Chicago has like this motion graphics industry, but I'm like, if I go to the cold where I'm from Detroit. So like if I go to the cold, I might as well go home so I can see my daddy every day. Like I was like, okay. Somehow chose LA because it's like the animation mecca, and I can have that option of like having a lot of opportunities. So that is how it took so long, and then how I got here.
Mhm. Yeah, for me, it was definitely a matter of when and not really if. But for me, it was also like I had to let that kind of become my truth a little bit. That sounds corny. I'm from New Jersey. I have not lived more than like an hour and a half away max from where like my parents live. I went to school in New Jersey and New York. I worked in New York and Connecticut at Blue Sky. I was always in that hub, and I always felt so lucky to be like, oh, well, all of those like big studios are over there, but like there's a community here, and like there's an industry here. And I'm lucky I was like born adjacently to it. Um, but then it just kind of, I like feature. And if you want to do feature and Blue Sky is gone, it's like, what are you gonna do?
I know, man. Like,
Yeah. And for me, it's like there were flashes of like possible opportunities before even like, when I was at Blue Sky. One of the negatives about Blue Sky, to be honest, was because it was kind of this island, like people didn't leave. So there weren't a lot of opportunities to like move up internally. So a lot of the time, like the only way you could really get promoted sometime was to leave. So it's like I would interview with other places, and like I remember interviewing with like Illumination, and again, this is all pre-pandemic. And at the time, they thought I was in California already, and I told them at that point I was willing to relocate. And there were several like studios that I talked to that it was like they thought I was already there, and then when they found out I wasn't, they were like they didn't even want to like interview me, even though I was like, oh, I'll relocate. Like I know people out there. Like I could do that. I'll do long distance, with him, like whatever. This was also before we were married, so I was like, whatever, I'll like do it. um and then some places they were more open to it, but again, then it was like the idea of me moving out there by myself was very daunting for a really long time. So I think it helped again for me personally that I had somebody, but I think for me too, it's like I know it would have happened no matter what. I think obviously it would have happened differently. Like I definitely would have had a job first. I definitely would have like been working somewhere else and like had more of like a nest egg saved up before I came out. So it's like the circumstances would have been different, but I know like this is where I wanted to be. Um, and that's kind of annoying. Again, you know, it's like love it or hate it. It's like it is what it is. That like if you want to work for some of these bigger companies or the companies that do a lot of the production, you know, for the TV like studios of them, it's like it's all not all here, but a lot of it's here.
Yeah.
Because then
When
we
you
also
say,
did.
sorry.
Oh no, I was probably gonna jump too ahead anyway.
No, when you say that this is where I want to be, are you still speaking about, are you starting to speak about location, or you mean like the type of work that you're getting exposure to
I guess
now?
a little bit of both. For me, it was like I knew I wanted to work in development, and I know a lot of the big companies, like all of their, you know, whether or not their production happens in the U.S. or it happens elsewhere, or if their production happens at like a smaller studio somewhere else, like the development happens in California because that's like all the writers are here and all the direct, you know, again, it's kind of like a snake eating its own tail, like or I don't know, chicken and egg, I guess, kind of thing. Of like the talent is here, so then you establish things here, and then you establish things, you know. Um, but it's like, you know, because it's like, yeah, I looked at Canada, or we looked at Canada, we looked at other places, and it's just like nothing matched what I wanted to do, and like paid decently enough
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
too. That's a big part of it.
Okay, so to
Hey,
continue
can I ask
going.
something really quickly?
Oh, sure.
One thing, like Jen said, I already kind of understood that you had to be here to get a job, and so
Mm,
that's another reason why I decided to move.
yeah.
Because again, as a not highly talented artist, I didn't think I would be able to get a job from far away. And
Mm,
then additionally, something that helped me, that is like the opposite of Jen, is that I've lived a lot of places, and
mm,
so I don't have that fear that some people have where they're because like even when I was moving here, I was like, you know, I'm moving from New Orleans and people thought I was from New Orleans and they're like, oh, that's going to be a big culture shock. I'm like, I'm not from New Orleans. Like, so I've already had a culture shock. I've had multiple, like I'm from Detroit.
as soon as I dropped South Korea, I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'm from Detroit. I went to school in Rochester, New York. I moved to New Orleans, right? Like I lived in New Orleans as a kid too, so that's why I kind of picked it. But I moved to New Orleans after I graduated from college. I lived in 2 cities in South Korea, and then I came back to New Orleans. So like, what is California gonna do?
I think that's a good, like, just comparison though, because you have people like myself, Jen, that like we have barely been too far from the cities that we grew up in, especially if you come from somewhere like a New York, right? You're like, I don't need to go, not necessarily saying it's the best city in the world. You can say that. I'm not saying that at the moment. But it's like, why would I go too far? Because literally everything I want and need is right here, right? But I'm struggling, meeting some resistance, wondering if I have to do a pivot, like what you're saying, versus like persistence. And, just thinking, well, it's one thing to maybe move to North Carolina, Louisiana, but like we're talking the whole other side of the country. And sometimes you may think, like, if I'm going to do a move like that, should I just go to, like you said, Jen, Canada? Should I try and go to South Korea? Should I just, if I'm going to make a big move, should I go kind of like somewhere else? So you were also starting to say a little bit, Deborah, that you made the move despite having a job. So what started happening for both of you once? Did you put that, like, did you change your social media and LinkedIn to say LA, or you starting to reach out with people and letting them know that you were moving? Like, what started happening? I guess once you made the decision, do you feel like the universe started to support that with opportunities and job stuff starting to click for you, essentially,
Yeah.
because this is what was next for you?
Mm. I know for me, it absolutely did. But Deborah, you go first.
Absolutely not.
Okay, and this is why both of you are here, because we need the real and unfiltered, semi-filtered stuff. Like,
Yeah, like I didn't change my stuff until I was actually here, but I was like, even if I was to get a arbitrary job, I was like, at least I could put that it's in LA and they could believe that I'm in LA. Like,
Mm.
so if I get I got a job teaching high school, I was like, I can put I work in Crenshaw and you can't teach because I moved. Well, I mean, I did teach in the pandemic, but I live in LA, so at least even if I have LA on my because I'm not about to put my whole address on my resume, but I'm like, believe me, I'm in LA. Yes, I'm not lying. But also, it took me 2 years to get a job. So, and I moved a month before the pandemic. And so I had one good month of networking, and then the pandemic hit, which didn't affect the animation industry like that. But I was applying to jobs and then I stopped because I didn't want to. I was trying to get like PA, PC jobs, which I never did before. And I'm like, do they think I'm too old? Like, all the internal dialogue of I don't have the experience. So I'm trying to re-break into the industry because I consider working in my job in Korea that's when I broke into the industry. And then I worked in animation stuff in New Orleans, but it wasn't like industry stuff. And so I consider my job that I had, this last job I had, I re-broke into the industry, and I was working on re-breaking into the industry, and it took me 2 years to do that. So no,
Actually, can you talk more
the
about that
stars
too,
did not
Deborah?
align.
Because I feel like we have viewers and people that's probably going to watch the replay that can relate a lot to it. Like they had something, and seemed like they were on track, and then maybe whatever life event, one way or another, pandemic, something stopped them. So they have the experience. So they're not really trying to break in, but they're kind of trying to come back to
Yeah,
it.
like
I mean, even when I left Blue Sky, like I had a wall for like a year and a half where I was just like, ooh, nothing's kind of happening. So you're here and you're like, well, I have the experience. Maybe I'm not entry level. Maybe I'm a little further away from like early career, starting to teeter-totter mid-career. What was just some things that you found helpful for breaking back into the industry? You just
Network.
have to shout it? Okay, yeah.
So because of like essentially during the pandemic part of the pandemic where we weren't going anywhere, most of my interviews came from people reaching out to me on LinkedIn because I post so much. And that was kind of annoying because it's like sometimes what the recruiter thinks can be a good fit and what the people who actually hiring think are a good fit do not match up. And it's like, will y'all stop reaching out to me? Like, if y'all gonna hire me, like she thinks I'm good, but this dude who's the manager is like, you don't work in the video game industry? Do you okay, transferable skills. Y'all know about that? But anyway.
Yeah.
So I think the privilege that I did have and where stars aligned was in the behind the scenes of being able to stay. Like I did, do an Airbnb when I first got here, but then I was able to stay with one of my fraternity brothers, and then I was able to stay with X. So that's where stars aligned, where I was blessed to not have to worry about, being unhoused. But I still didn't. I was underemployed or unemployed for different spans of time.
Your turn, Jen.
Yeah. All right. Oh
Just
man, where are we
everything. Just
Yeah.
start from wherever you
I mean,
want and keep it going.
For me, like I had said earlier, after I left Blue Sky, I taught for a little bit. I was doing freelance like writing and video editing for Cartoon Brew. And I wasn't really like looking for a new industry job. I kind of liked having like taking that step back. But it was like and the main reason, to be honest, this is such like an American thing. The main reason we moved to LA was because of health insurance. It would have cost like the difference between like him working in New York, but then like the company being based in California, like the out of state costs or whatever. I don't remember. We have like a spreadsheet, but obviously I'm going to share it. But like the cost difference was enough per year that we were like, we should probably just do the move. So that was really the big thing. It was like the health insurance was just too much. So once we decided we were going to move, that's when I was like, okay, well, you know what? I guess then like I do have more opportunities now, so I will start applying. But then I also kind of was a little bit pickier than I have been in the past, where I was like, you know what, I'm only going to apply for development stuff. It doesn't come up very often. That's the other challenging thing, is that like you don't see them very often, because a lot of the time I feel like they legally they have to post them, and then what probably always happens is like they just like promote someone internally, because like there's always people wanting to do the lateral move to development. Because it's fun. Like I'm like, who doesn't want to be in development? That's how I feel. Yeah. So for me, it was like, I'm only gonna apply and for that. And so that was all I was applying for. I didn't hear back from like literally anybody. And then literally like the Warner Brothers job for me, it's like the funniest one, because that was the first one. I was like, I'm not like, screw cover letters. I spent so much time writing these like nice custom. I was like, I'm not doing cover letter. Like,
Say
I don't
it
care.
again.
I did LinkedIn Easy Apply. Like,
Yes, yes. I turn on that filter too, because I'm like, you have my LinkedIn, I'm uploading my resume, and you want me to type the same
you have
stuff
to
in
read.
again? No, keep the job.
No, so dumb. Yeah. So I was like, it was just literally, it was a Hail Mary. And to be fair, I think like, you know, what helped me get the job that I currently have is that it is an entry level job. And I am someone with like 4+ years of industry experience. Like, I was not an entry level candidate. And obviously, like, that was really appealing to them. But it's true though, like what they really liked about me was that I had been in story, and I had been at a feature studio for like a huge chunk of time and worked on features. Because they do long forms. Like, I work for Warner Brothers Television, like not WAG. So I'm in like WBA, but it's like they do a lot of like the
People don't
direct.
know what that means. It's
Oh,
all the same thing.
I know, they're different. They're completely different companies. Yeah, so I work for like Warner Brothers Animation and like Cartoon Network technically too, and it's like they do long forms and like, you know, feature stuff. But like the WAG is like the theatrical like side. They do, yeah. But you can look it up. It's fine. But yeah, so I like Hail Married. And then I got the interview, and then I got the job. And it was literally like we arrived to California, and like the first thing we did was set up the internet so I could have my job interview. And like I got the job that day, and it like rained that day, and it was like my first day in LA, and I'm like, I got a job, it rained. And I was like, this is magical. And it was very like, I read into it way too much.
No, that's so great. I mean, I would have done the same thing. Jen, do you, and I mean, Deborah also speaks to this, because I struggle with this sometimes too. It's like you see, you know how much experience you have, and it's like, well, this is the position, which is again is entry level, and this is how much we're going to pay you, which has nothing to do with your experience, because this is the position. How do you just deal with those feelings,
Yeah.
like, just, I don't know, do you push them down? Do
Yeah.
you vocalize with your peers?
Yeah,
And
it's like all of the above. I mean, for me, like one of the ironic things is I make almost double what I made at Blue Sky. Like, and I'm
that's
just
the
like,
crazy part too.
yeah, even like y'all, like when like we have friends who were PAs at Blue Sky, and then like the difference when they became like PAs at Netflix, and I mean, there was that Netflix money, that bubbles burst a little bit, but when it was good, it was good. But yeah, everybody, I feel like, again, it was an island, so they can underpay you a little bit. I've heard that Pixar is kind of the same, because they're their own little island up in the Bay Area as far as like feature animation goes. Yeah, so it's like I was making more, so I was kind of like, I didn't care. I was making more than I made at any other job previously. I do still get a little self-conscious about still being a PA, because I am very far past that at this point. And it's also one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I work in development, and then it's like, oh, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm a PA, and they're like, oh, and I'm like, no, but I'm a cool PA.
You're like a senior PA, a vintage PA.
Right? But it's like, what I actually do at this job is like not like, I'm technically a creative PA, which also makes me feel even like dorkier. But I like also I'm like, oh, but it's true though. Yeah, but it's like I am like working with the long form team, and like I'm submitting notes, like I'm a little baby exec is how I think about it in my head. And I'm like, and they know my intentions. And I think for me, that's the important thing, is that like for me, this was like a long-term investment. And it's been very clearly communicated to my boss. He's very supportive. That was like a little strange for me too, to be honest, was like having that like level of openness and trust, like right from the get-go with like upper management. Yeah, so for me, it's like I'm willing to sit through this like title and like I do work above that title because I kind of trust the system, not really like the system, because obviously the animation industry is like a little wild, wild west, but it's kind of like trusting the people who are in power where I am, that like, circumstances externally, aside, that like they will eventually recognize what I'm doing. And that's not something I could say about like every place that I've worked and been to.
I think what you said is important about that you've let your intentions be known, like your career goals and where you see yourself. And it sounds like you have people that at least are hearing you, and you have a certain value that you're operating with as you're in your workplace.
Yeah.
Before I moved on, Deborah, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, so since I'm like an adult moving here and didn't move like out of college, I kind of strategically think about things. And so even though I was underemployed and unemployed at times, anytime I could, I'm really good at paying my bills. So
Say
I
that. Pay them bills.
so when I was staying with people, I didn't have to pay rent. And so even though I was underemployed, I paid off my car while I was here, and I paid off a consolidated loan that I got that was like $750 a month a payment.
Ooh,
And I'm glad I
that's
got rid
real
of.
adulting.
It was like, it was good to get it, but then it was bad to get it because it was like I consolidated a credit card before I moved here. So I had that $750 like extra payment, but then I was able to rack up credit card debt because I couldn't get a job. So
Yeah.
so it was like, it worked.
No, I appreciate you sharing that because that's just like, that's very real.
Yeah.
If you're
And so,
underemployed, like, what are you gonna do? Like,
but I be paying my bills though. And so exclusive, I just made my last student loan payment this month as well, which I will be making content about.
Congrats.
I have unique content that I will be making about that.
So impressive.
And so I am able to like, I don't try to take a job with a very low salary, but I'm able to take a job with a lower salary because I have knocked out a lot of my debt that I had. I still have one pandemic credit card that I'm trying to pay down, but like with the salary negotiation additionally, because in another life, like in New Orleans, in tangential to be in the animation industry, I worked a lot in the Urban League movement, and I was like president of the young professionals down there. And so I had a event about salary negotiation where I brought a lady to talk about salary negotiation because I'm like, I need to know about that. So y'all need to know about that. So we go about to have an event about it. And so something that I did when I moved here was like, I refuse to give a salary range because I don't want to leave money on the table because I'm moving from New Orleans, which is a lower, socioeconomic area, and I'm moving to California, and I don't know how much I need. Like I can do the salary calculators or whatnot, but I don't know how much y'all are going to pay me. And so I remember there was one company, a prominent company, that was like, I was on the phone with the dude and he was like, so what's your salary range? I'm like, I would prefer to know the salary range of the position. He's like, oh, okay, that's good. But like, what is the salary range? I'm like, I would prefer to know the salary range that y'all, like, I'm not telling you a number because I don't want it to be that I'd be like, oh, like 70,000 and y'all had 100,000 as the base. Like, no, y'all gonna tell me what the range is, and I'm gonna decide if that's a good range for me.
Yeah, I love California now. I think I feel like last
Yes.
month or even this month now they have to list the range like
Thank
on the
God,
posting.
'cause
That
it
is
is
so nice.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Yes.
It
like,
is
don't waste
bad.
my time.
Yeah, so it's like for like places that don't have that, sometimes you could say a number. Like what I learned in that salary negotiation event that I went to is like sometimes a person is willing to take lower, but because they say something that's higher, then they're like knocked out. But it's like, if you tell me the salary range and it's like maybe $10,000 to $20,000 less than I want, I can make that decision.
Yes.
So that's why I did that as well. So yeah, like luckily and getting the job that I got a production coordinator job first, and that was like a decent amount of money for me to sustain myself. And then I got actually originally got the job to be assistant coordinator, but it didn't start till June. So they graciously allowed me to start as a production coordinator in January of last year. And so both positions paid decently for me to survive.
Nice. So it's been so interesting for me with that like whole salary thing because they'll be like, it's industry standard. And I'm like, okay, well, what does your number mean then for industry standard?
Yeah.
And and I would say, well, I'm looking for something above industry standard. And I was like, why are we playing these word games? Like, like say what it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I was coming from Netflix and they'll say like, oh, well, you're um in for like a reality check. And then I'll be like, why does it have to be like that? Like, like why? Because
Mhm.
like Netflix was paying a living wage, and
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
you guys kind of want me to move across the country with a salary cut, and there's just knowing what's been going on in the economy, like they keep trying to hesitate and saying like, oh, we may enter a recession, and it's like eggs are $8, like we are here. Like,
It's just like
wasn't
if you're
gas like
getting a
crazy in California over
yeah.
the summer too? Like, I
Yeah.
think we are very much here.
Yeah, and that's
So
that notion if you're getting only a 3% like bump, like you're getting a 5% salary cut because it's like 8% like interest and everything and just like the way that inflation's been.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just very interesting kind of navigating that dance, and I just kind of feel like artists probably have it a little bit easier because they want the artist bad, and
Mhm.
compared to production management, it's like, well, if you don't take this, someone else is going to take it.
Yeah, well,
So
I think with production management, in my experience, it's like more often than not, I've been told like this is not negotiable. Like we don't negotiate for like these job titles, and like there's no negotiating, um,
yes,
which is frustrating. On the other thing too that has me thinking about is like as much as we love being like at one company and stable and everything, it also just like it sadly doesn't pay in a lot of cases to stay at the same company anymore either, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like you try to go for an internal promotion and like they know your salary, so like
yes,
they're gonna bump you, maybe like whatever however many grand, and like that's it, versus if you went for the same job at another company and you could like renegotiate your salary and they don't know what you were making previously, like it's insane. Like for him it was like just jumping from like two different companies to third company, like he's bumped his salary like 25 grand in like 2 years just from like going to other places.
but then again, I just don't have confidence that working in production management, we could do that kind of
Oh
thing.
no, no, no,
Right,
no.
okay, because I'm like, based off of what I've been
Ma'am,
hearing,
no.
they're like, yeah, this is it, or
He's
we'll
an
find somebody
engineer.
else.
No.
And I'm like, oh, I would love if we can have that kind of thing. So this conversation is going by pretty quickly.
Mhm.
There were some like actual logistical things I want to cover with you guys. You already talked about temporary housing, which was great, Deborah, but you also have on our list like temporary storage, like what did you guys do in that capacity?
Mm-hmm.
And both of you did, well, Deborah, I don't know how you got your car, but Jen, you said that you drove. Deborah, did you ship your car?
Absolutely, because I drove 110 miles a day and I was not driving to California. So
Okay, so
I'm
just
like, I
talk
am
about
flying.
It was
how do you
supposed to be
guys
fun.
do that. We do have one question. Oh, that's actually a good point. I still we're gonna answer questions a little bit towards the end, but please put them in the chat and we will, make sure that we are answering everybody's questions before we end the live stream. So
Mhm.
yeah, how did you manage the logistics with your cars?
Yeah, I just kind of Googled, and I, I I I had a great experience, but if I had looked at the reviews, I probably wouldn't have used the company that I use.
Mm,
But I did have a good experience. So
yeah.
but I encourage you to like look at reviews and stuff. But yeah, I just looked up companies that ship cars and looked at for a decent price. And a lot of times, sometimes to get the cheaper price, you have to pay cash. So
Mhm.
sometimes you have to pay cash at the pickup, and then you have to pay cash at the drop off. So it took me about like it took about a week for my car to get there because they're on the little how they transport cars like new cars, they're on those things. Sometimes they're smaller versions of it, but it depends on how many people are before you and where they got to go in the country to determine how long it takes for you to get your car.
Was it like
And
a
then
grand? Like how much was it?
about either 700 or 1,000.
Yeah. I feel like that's
It's
like
up for
hasn't
that.
really changed because like my husband is from LA and then he moved to New York for Blue Sky and like he shipped his car that way and it was like $1,000 like 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Like it actually hasn't changed that much.
It's looking
Yeah, and I
like
do want to add.
1,400 now. I was
Yeah.
Oh,
casually
it has gone up
looking.
a little.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess
I
with
do
gas
want to add.
recently.
Yeah, I do want to add for the temporary housing that I did Airbnb. I did actually like I have a friend who lived in LA who connected me with a real estate agent that was able to connect me with people who had a room for rent, and I was able to do like a monthly payment of like $1,000. And then they graciously allowed me to stay longer because the pandemic hit. So I was only planning on being there maybe a few months, but then the pandemic hit. So I stayed from February to maybe August of 2020. But yeah, you can do even if it's like even more temporary and you have the funds to get an apartment. Through my extensive research on YouTube, it's good to like get here first because like if you're looking for cheaper rent, something that I heard on a YouTube video is like to just like sometimes the cheaper ones aren't on the websites. You should go walk around a neighborhood and find see a for rent sign, and then that's sometimes how you can get even cheaper.
Yeah. We had some trouble like when we first because a lot of places when they found out we weren't here yet, they like didn't even want to talk to us. And I understand that it's like they didn't want to rent to someone who hasn't literally like physically walked through like an apartment. But thankfully, like the apartment we're in now was like I don't even know like if it was I'm like it wasn't like my first pick or anything, but it was like one that I was like, oh, I would really love this one. And I do really like this apartment. And like for me, it's like, yeah, we didn't need temporary housing. Again, he's from LA originally. So when we moved here or when we were moving here, he already, it's like before the chat, Deborah and I were talking and I was like, oh, I've heard of the town you live in. Like that's progress for me. Where it's like he was like, oh well, you're probably gonna get a job at one of these studios, so we're gonna want to live over here. And like he's Chinese, so he's like, I want like quick access to like all the good Chinese food like out east. So like, I don't want to live here. Like, oh, the valley's really hot, so he was like, we're gonna look in these areas. I was like, okay.
And I'm like, after a couple months, people are like, "Oh, the valley." I'm like, "What is that?" I lived there. Oh, okay, I guess. Yeah.
People were like, "Are you in the valley?" I was like, "I don't know." Am I?
I love that.
But another additional part of like when Jen was saying that they don't like when you're not here, literally. Like, unless you go into one of the places that like cost like 3,000, 4,000 a month and they just got apartments, you're going to be coming to these like mom and pop apartments. And the place I live now, I came to view the apartment. I viewed two apartments, one on the first floor, one on the second floor. I was like, okay, heat rises. I ain't about to do the one on the second floor. I want to do the one on the first floor.
Yeah.
I drove to where I was staying, which was 5 minutes away, because he's like, okay, I'll go and apply online to the apartment. I drove 5 minutes away, got on my computer to apply, and it wouldn't let me apply. And I called him and he's like, oh, somebody else called and was in the apartment.
Yeah, that kept happening. And then like I think what helped us to that point was that like ours, it's not like a mom and pop, it is a mom and pop one. Like it's a woman who she like this is her second unit and like I think it was like she lived in this unit and then like her job changed and then she decided to keep it and then like she lives somewhere else. So she's not someone that has like 14 rental properties and she's not like a corporation. So for her, like she just really wants people to like come here and like stay. And that's all we want. So ours is like it's a 2-bedroom. It's like $2,300 a month, which is like makes me cry. But that's really not bad here. And coming from New York too, I'm also like, I was like more prepped for it. Like I imagine that's a bit of like a culture shock if you don't come from like a big city too, of like how much rent is, where people will be like 23, like, oh, that's nice. I'm like, I know. And the other thing too, that I didn't mention also is like, we got rid of a car when we moved here too. Like we each had our own car like previously. Mine was like a 2002 with like I have like a Mazda, very outdated safety features. So we were like, we're gonna get rid of yours. So and then it actually worked out because there was a massive like storm, like flood right before I moved, and then my car got flooded, and like so I had to get rid of it anyway.
Oh.
But I was like, yeah, it was a whole thing. But like we were always planning on getting rid of it because that's another thing. Like with a city like this, is like parking is a nightmare. And like our apartment comes with a parking spot, but we knew
Nice.
like, and that was one of our like kind of requirements was like we wanted a parking spot. And we knew like it wasn't worth it to have more than one car. And so far it's been convenient. Well, it hasn't been convenient. It hasn't been inconvenient, I guess is rather. There's times where it's like, oh, this would be nice, but we're also in a very lucky spot where like his studio is on the way to my studio. So we have like a very nice commute.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so the thing about temporary storage, the reason I added that to the list is because of the simple fact that I did not know that my storage would be in Texas.
Oh no.
So like
What?
I'm like packing my stuff in New Orleans, and I got like these boxes that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna put this at the front of my storage unit so that I can always access it. And then I get here but I don't have any place to like put my stuff, so I have to like leave it in the storage, and it was in Texas. And so I was just like, wow. I didn't have my stuff for like 2 years.
What?
Wow.
And so, yeah, make sure when you're doing research for storage that it is actually in LA.
Yeah, no, that's wild.
If you don't continue to your domicile.
Yeah. I feel like that's such a big thing. 'Cause I feel like for me, it's like the majority of the people that I know did move out here first without a job. Like, and it's so interesting because it's like there's so much there are like so many different levels of like privilege that can allow or not allow somebody to do that.
Yes.
So it's like frustrating because I feel like even though like we're two very different examples, but it's like there's not even like it's not even like a binary. It's like there's not one size fits all, two size fit all. Like it's all different things. Like yeah, like if it helped again, it's like if you know people here and you can couch surf and like kind of figure out a neighborhood. If you know people and you can, deal with roommates. Maybe if you're a little bit younger, I feel like we're all like kind of we're at that phase in our lives where I'm like, I don't ever want to live with another human ever again. He's an exception. But even
like
then, I'm
more
like,
than one human, like that's the max. One other human, maybe one four-legged roommate too. Like that's
and that's
kind of
the
it.
thing too, where at the same time I'm saying that, and I'm like, I'm always like, Monique, we have a second bedroom. Like, if you want to come out here, and that's I feel like that's kind of a funny thing about this conversation too, is that like I've been low key not trying to like get you to move out here.
It's high key.
I mean,
You're like, I know you don't, but you just should.
It sucks though, because it's like for me, it's like I know like your family's in Queens still, and like you have a lot of family in the East Coast as well, like just broadly speaking. And like yeah, like our communities are out there. To be honest, I feel like it's like would this have I do think again for me this would have happened even if Blue Sky was still open today. But I feel like that really also like I say helped, like it was upsetting, but it was like that, there are still some people who like live in that area, but in general, it's like everybody left. So then it was like there wasn't even like a community there anymore anyway. So we were like, what are we doing here? Like most of our friends are gone anyway. Cause for a while, again, the remote thing was we were like gonna stay there and just live there, and he worked remote, from in California and like whatever. But then it just kind of was like that was another part of it was like the community and events and whatnot and like what we were missing out on. Yeah, which is like sad.
A quick thing to add of like, Monique, what Jen is offering you is very good because the flip side of that is an unspoken thing where like I had friends or friend that I always talked to before moving here, and then all of a sudden they kind of go ghost when you do move here. And I feel like what I figured out, which I'm not sure if this is 100%, but it's like people who live here, no matter if they're from here or just moved here and live here for a while, they don't want you to ask for them for anything, which I wasn't planning on doing. But then they just kind of like go radio silent. and I had an interview on my channel with a guy, Bill Hudson, and he kind of confirmed this, where like if when you first move here, they'll be like, oh, cool, good that you live here, all right. And then if you've been here a year, they're like, oh, okay, so come over here, you can do this, da, da, da. So they're like, are you going to stand, like, are you going to stay here, are you going to figure it out yourself, and then they'll help you.
Interesting.
So that's
Yeah,
an unspoken
Jen
idea.
cannot ghost me because I have her husband's number. So and her mom, I have her on social media. Like, at least I know her name. So
Yeah.
she just can't do that.
So
I'm
that doesn't
sorry.
happen to all the time, but it did happen with a couple people where I was like, why are y'all not talking to me even though
Yeah.
I've been here
Mm,
this way? So
yeah.
Well,
And I
before
think that,
oh, sorry, go ahead. No,
oh
I
no,
was
I
about
was
to
just gonna
change.
say, no, just real quick. I was gonna say, I think one of the challenges, and I feel like we've talked about this, is like the problem with that too is like again, it's like another like chicken and egg problem where it's like I need money to be able to move here, but like you won't give me the job because I'm not there yet. Like, but like it's literally like, can I work remote until I can afford to move here? Like, do you see how like this needs to be like the order of operations is important here?
Okay, so pre-pandemic, that was like completely out of the question. However, again, in my personal experiences, I'm encountering some places. I can't say it's a studio per se, it's more like the teams themselves. So, whatever
Mhm.
the productions are within the studios, they are showing a bit of leniency with that. So, that's not to completely rule things out, but there's still some of that. Now, we did have a question. I just want to show it up here. And that's, what position does your husband, Jen, does he do in the industry?
My husband is a pipeline engineer. So he writes like he's like a software nerd. He writes like tools. His current job, he's at DreamWorks, and he writes tools specifically for like their hair and fur department.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, which is funny because my first job at Blue Sky was I was in the fur department there. So like he'll like talk about stuff, and I'm like, I kind of understand this because
Oh,
it's a very technical department.
and good pivot back into, Jen, you moved out partnered. Deborah, you moved out as a single person. You already talked about, Jen, how, what a difference that made because you moved partnered. But you also did talk a little bit that you were willing to do it when you guys were just dating and kind of figure that out. For both of you, mainly Deborah, like, did you have any concerns about what like dating, partnership, that kind of stuff could be like for you out there with whatever your experiences were in the cities that you were in before?
so in that, like, I consume a lot of media and some of it is in different parts of the country, and I already knew that dating in LA is hopeless. I did not move here with the thought of that I was going to find anybody. I was like, this would be a nice to have, but like I'm going to be concentrated on my career, and if I find someone, then that would be a nice plus. So I have an ex, and then I have a current boyfriend, so that is a nice surprise.
Mm.
But I did not come here like, if it's hopeless in other cities, it's even more hopeless in LA. Like, literally, when I would go get my haircut, like, I was talking to my barber about dating and stuff like that, and the dude next to him, the barber next to him, was like from LA, and my barber was like, okay, give her advice about dating in LA, and he's like, don't.
Okay, so if I can make it a little bit personal, your ex and your current partner, are they also Black?
Yes,
Okay, so now my concerns
which
are,
is
and because
a
this
thing
is,
too.
this is supposed to be like a transparent conversation, chilling, talking with your friends. That's my concern. If I were to move out there, not that I'm opposed to interracial dating for
Yeah, I was
myself.
like, my husband's Chinese.
Well, Jen, like, you're not part of the conversation. No offense, not this part. This part, Jen. Just being a Black woman going out there, knowing that from my observations, my peers who are also Black women are often in interracial relationships. I'm not, again, opposed to it myself.
Mhm.
But just like a reality about, like, I'm used to, my dating history, and I'm just like, it's concerned. I don't want to be, I'm a hopeless romantic. I'm not just hopeless, like, So it's like, what would that be like out there? Like, do I what do I
So
do? You know, so
I can help you with like, or anybody else. Like I be knowing the places where they like I because I went to a singles dating event, which was like a black singles dating event, and then even though I'm an introvert, people are impressed by the amount of events that I'm able to find in any
yes,
given season.
honestly,
Which I will do. I do have a video planned on how I find events for people who don't know how to find events or like need help in that area. But I'm very introverted, like analytical about how I find my events. Like I do massive amounts of research. I'm like better than extroverts at finding events. But yeah, like I like to date people who look like me. So that was like gonna be important. But in LA, there is a lot of Black people, but it's just that we're all spread out.
right.
So that's what makes it harder, is that there's a lot, considering that, I mean, there's not a large percentage, but there's a lot of, numerically, it's just that they're either in like Inglewood, Crenshaw, or just spread out in other places. Like even the street I live on, I'm like, there is a lot of Black people that I see on the street. And I'm in Sherman Oaks in the valley. And I'm just like, how did I find the street in like the valley where like, I mean, like when I walk up down the street, I'm like, I see a lot of Black people. This is crazy.
So interesting. We're gonna start kind of winding down. So again, if anybody has any questions to put in the chat so we can answer them. I guess to wind down, is there anything else that you would do differently having moved to California? Nope.
Not really. Like, I mean, I did a lot of things I shouldn't have done, like stop applying to jobs.
I
But
also kind of want to
again,
stop.
like when you asked me the question earlier, it was my network that got me my industry job, where at least I was good at, like, luckily I have a YouTube channel where even as an introvert, I was still networking throughout the pandemic because I was interviewing people on my YouTube channel. So I found another way to network when we couldn't leave the house. But also I advocate for advocating in your network. I was just telling like my partner yesterday that even if you have a network, you have to like talk to them, and like you can't just have a network. You have to like have conversations with people in your network to get them to do something. So I had stopped applying for jobs because it was just like I'm applying to this computer. Like I feel like older people are like, oh yeah, like young people, y'all got like the internet and Google, and it's like, but it's like a lack of human it's like the lack of the human element, and it's like you're applying to this computer, and then like freaking 1 hour later they're like, we have moved on. Like, dang, I don't even get no interview. Like what? Like, okay, I guess. And so it was like very discouraging. So I just stopped applying to stuff. And so, like I said before, like a lot of stuff that I was getting interviews for was people reaching out to me on LinkedIn. But then a friend of a friend like hired me, like helped me get a job as an assistant editor. And then I started in production. But that's how I got my job, literally through my network of literally somebody I met after I got to LA. So
yeah,
I would say sorry, Jen, to cut you off. For our viewers, the thing about the three of us is like we are actually highly engaged on social media. We're not saying you have to be like us, but it's one thing to put your stuff out there and being like, no one's responding on my stuff. I mean, yeah, sure. But you will see us in the comments of people's stuff. Like you will see us retweeting them, mentioning them, Instagram comments, LinkedIn, liking, celebrating, stuff like that. We are like highly engaging in those spaces. And I believe that's why like our network supports us the way that they do. It's because we actually support them in like a lot of capacities as well too.
be sure to check out my authentic networking video on my channel.
Yes.
and then for me, it was cool because this year I attended Lightbox for the first time because it's like a town over or whatever. And like I met a lot of like Twitter mutuals in person for the first time. And I was like, so for me, it's like it's not even like regret, because I don't regret, like I'm very happy like where I am. And again, like I really actually love my job. I know that sounds almost like not pejorative, but like, I don't know, it sounds corny. But it's like, I wish I would have gotten out here sooner, because I think
that was my next question.
I think I would be farther, because I think I would have figured things out faster. Like I would have figured out what I wanted, because I feel like for me too, it was like, oh, like as a young woman, and I feel like this happens to a lot of women in management, it was, oh, hey, you're really good at like managing projects, because a lot of the boys in my life sucked at it. Like, and I was in like a male dominated, major and like industry. So it became, oh, like you should be a producer. And it was like, that sounds cool. And like producer, that sounds very fancy, so you go into, you're a PA. And then, it wasn't until later that I was like, what's development? And at the time, Blue Sky literally had like one woman who was like the development person. And it was a mystery what her job was. Like, God bless her. But I was like,
it was
what
a coveted position to be able, like, it was impossible to get that development PA.
Yeah, and that was that was so much drama for me personally that we will not get into, but that was a whole thing. When it finally like opened up, like they started trying to have development before the buyout and then the closure. But it was like, for me, it was like figuring out like, oh, well, okay, what I'd actually like is this thing. And like, oh, this is a little bit different than this thing. And it's like what you think a job is versus what it actually is, kind of thing. And even now in this job, like there are roles, like there are different, like learning what different types of executives there are even. I'm like, I didn't know there were different kinds. And like, it's the kind of thing you only learn about when you're in the system already. And like the people who were there, it's like, oh yeah, they were a manager here. And then like someone thought they'd be a good fit for this. And it wasn't that they were like gunning for it because they didn't know it existed. But like once you're in and you do, like it is something you can like try to navigate your career towards. It's a little less about moving, more just general career stuff. But
go ahead, Deborah.
So for me, I think I moved here at the perfect time, at the perfect age, because as a introvert slash like analytical person slash perfectionist, recovering perfectionist, as an evolved Virgo, like essentially, I just spent so much of my 20s in that, like, my hard work will get me places, and
yes!
I
figured out,
yeah, I figured out in New Orleans that I should do the networking thing. And so it like, after like 10 years of like my adulthood being like, yeah, my hard work will get me places, and then being like, why is that person there? Then actually like testing out and using my network and being able to get in rooms that I wouldn't have been able to get in before, I think is perfect for me to move to LA now that I figured that out. Then when I was like graduating from college, because I always tell people, even before I moved here, like theoretically, you go to college and become friends with people, and then you guys graduate and like move out and like live to an apartment. But I didn't actually have friends in my major because I was one of two Black people in my freshman class, and the two people that I was friends with, one that was like after at RIT, after your second year, you kind of go film animation, and so one person was in film, and then the other dude, he was in stop motion, but then he like changed to like paralegal like major or something like that. And he was like a very talented stop motion artist, but like being realistic, I guess. And so I didn't really have friends in my major to like make the move to California. So like I feel like this was the perfect time. And then another thing which I kind of added to the doc of like of culture shock is like, and I feel like the thing I mentioned of like your people not talking to you is kind of part of culture shock moving to LA. But another part of it is like the flakiness, which I already dealt with flakiness in New Orleans. So like when people, like the number one people told me would be culture shock moving to LA was people being flaky. But since I already understood people being flaky, I wasn't worried about it. But people are flaky on another level in LA, where they literally come up with things to be flaky about. Like I think I posted this on my Instagram story and like on my Facebook, where like people will, like when I first moved here, there were a couple of people like, oh, you should come to the studio, the animation studio. Like, you should come to the studio. And I'm like, this was your idea. I don't have a job, so I have plenty of time. Yes, I'll come to the studio. When can we come to the studio? And then they don't follow through on their suggestion to come to the studio. And I'm like, you could have just shut it up and not invited me to the studio.
You could have done nothing.
Like, why do y'all create things to flake out on? So that is like it's like extreme flakiness here.
Yeah. Oh no. For me, it's the drivers here. And again, coming from New York, New Jersey, like, nah, y'all here, you suck. Like people here that when I have friends who visit here and they like rent a car, literally everybody I warn, I'm like, people here treat stop signs like yield signs.
Absolutely not.
No,
Like,
I disagree.
through.
Like in New Orleans, they treated stop signs like yield signs. They don't even stop here. Like
Oh
They don't
no,
either.
y'all are not
If
helping
it's
me
late
feel
enough
better.
at night, yeah, like in the neighborhood I live in, if it's late enough at night, like people will just drive through. And I'm like, I'm right here, my lights are on, like, and you would have T-boned me if I didn't not trust you. The other thing for me, and my two major issues with LA are car, like driving culture here. And Monique, I'm just warning you right now, there is like no Caribbean food here. There's no
Oh, I
Dominican.
know.
There's no Dominican food for me here.
There's like, I know.
there are Caribbean restaurants, but there's no Caribbean food.
I need
No,
to know where the
yes.
restaurants are getting their food.
Yeah, there's like
I'm
there's
gonna
a place
open a
here.
restaurant as a front, and it's gonna
There's
be an animation
people
studio.
have been like, open a Dominican place because I'm just like, if I ever want Dominican food, I'm like, I have to cook it myself every time. I was
No.
like, you know how long that takes? There's like a place here that people always are like, oh, like, you know, there's a bakery chain called Porto's, and they have like Cuban food, like they have a lechon, like a plate.
Mm,
But it's like once it's gone, it's gone. So there's days I've gone and then they're like they ran out for the day. And it's good. And there's plantains, like there's
oh,
you know maduros, but like
nice.
there's like no Dominican places, man.
We do have 2 questions because we're a little over an hour. I know y'all are cool, but like I am on the East Coast. I'm starting to get a little tired. 2 questions, 2 comments. I did see the comment here just about us being everywhere on social media. Yes, we love that. Also, you are everywhere because I see you a lot too. I'll save the next comment. The first question we have here is what are the safe or best areas living in LA for a woman living alone, if y'all can speak to it, or maybe just share some areas that you heard are worth looking into.
I feel like for me, it's just like for multiple reasons, I personally would stay away from like downtown LA, like LA,
That's
and
fair.
like stay like around, like stay in the county, but like not like in the heart of LA.
Yeah, I'm not good with parts of LA. There are like a good amount of Facebook groups like Black Book Housing. There's like a bunch of LA uh housing groups that people talk about things in. So hit me up and I'll give you those because I don't know them off the top of my head. But I do know that Koreatown, unless you got somewhere to park, your car may be broken into, and there's a large homeless population there, so you might not want to move there.
Yeah, I feel like for me it's like Los Feliz. I always say it wrong because people here say it like white people, and I'm like my brain wants to say it in Spanish and it can't. What is it? Los Feliz. I don't know how they say it here.
You just say it like Spanish girl.
It's like Los Feliz, like it's like Feliz Navidad, Feliz cumpleaños, but like
It used to be Mexico.
yeah, for real.
Yeah.
California used to be Mexico.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
But the other for me, it's like the town. And again, it's obviously it's like the more safe a town is, usually the more expensive it is. So for me, it's like, oh, like Pasadena is like a gorgeous, gorgeous town, and like I go there all the time. Because I will never
live with
South
6 other
Pasadena
people.
would probably be cheaper. South Pasadena would probably be cheaper.
That's true.
And then I lived in Highland Park, which is like around the corner from South Pasadena. So
yeah. In general, like I tend to stay more on like the east side because we like go to a lot of like the Asian grocery store and that kind of thing.
But generally, a lot of the studios are going to be in Burbank / Glendale or Culver City.
Yeah, but Culver City's like far on the like near the water. That's on the west side. Yeah, that's kind of it too. It's like if you're at one of the studios on the west side, you're never, and you have friends. Like for us, it's like we have some friends, like a lot of friends who are on the west side, where it's like they work at like, you know, like a Blur or like Sony's over there, Amazon Studios is over there, and it's like cool, we'll see you never, because it's such a pain in the butt to like just drive from like where we are like over there and vice versa.
What I've been hearing. Okay, so this is gonna be the last question, everybody. It's the last question. What is your ultimate end goal for each of you? I'll go last.
I mean, for me, again, I've really taken to development, and like I've said a couple times where it was like, I want to do this. Oh wait, no, what I really wanted to do is this. Where I'm like, this time, this time it's like, oh yes, this was what I was trying to do the whole time. Where I do want to keep getting promoted and growing internally, and be a development executive, and really help kind of shepherd projects and talent like at the studio that I'm at. Um, and for me, it's like a great combination because it's like I'm a big reader and writer, so it's like giving feedback there, helping shape stories, working with existing IP and trying to get more new IP. And like just new stories, new original stuff. Obviously, that's a big struggle everywhere right now. But then still trying to like do things with existing IP that both honor and like pushes it forward. And like, corny as it is, it's like pushing the medium, more and more, and trying to get some of these big studios to take bigger risks and do more interesting projects. And
Girl, they are not going to take risk for a long time.
well, that's not, what, that's a not here conversation.
Okay.
But it's a little bit, it's interesting though, because it is like, I think more and more of them are kind of like realizing that the mid-budget animated movie does exist and it doesn't have to be atrocious looking.
Yes.
And that gives me a glimmer of hope, to be honest.
We also need just like more mid-budget movies. I feel like everything is just, it's too polarized.
Yeah.
Because not everything needs to be this super dramatic big thing. Like, we were just watching, just like think about like rom-coms and all the movies that were like in the early 2000s, like even around 2010-ish type of stuff. Like we need just things to not take themselves so seriously again.
Yeah.
Like,
I think for me, it's like we're slowly seeing them like come back around where it's like I feel like every single like fiscal report recently from every studio has been, we kind of realized that infinite growth with our streaming platform is impossible. So like we're going to focus on quality for a little bit. And you're just like, no shit.
How about that?
There's my one curse for the stream. Like,
yeah. What about you, Deborah? Ultimate
goal. For me, well, like it's kind of weird because my video kind of went out on mine.
We can still see you. You're glitching a little bit, but we can still see you and hear you.
Yeah, your audio's been fine.
Okay, so for me, what was interesting was that like moving here, my goal for so long was to like re-break into the industry, that when I finally did it, I wasn't really concentrating on like the far end like goals. I wanted to sit in my accomplishment of like I finally broke into the industry and I don't really want to think about anything else right now. And so, but then I got laid off a couple weeks ago, so I'm like in the job search. So I'm searching for like assistant editor jobs or whatever, but like I don't think about like my end goals. I think about my like next long-term goals. So like I am trying to get like another assistant editor job, but I do eventually want to get back into 3D modeling as my profession. But I just have to, have the demo reel for that, because Andre wants to try to get me at Pixar and stuff like that. So I have that in with him. But I just need to like for me, while everyone was going through like the like trauma from the pandemic, I was going through like PTSD from 5.5 years of working for people who were like racist and sexist to me. Oof. And so it was like everybody else was going through this like pandemic thing, but I was going through like healing from that. Mm-hmm. And so it was like a combination of me trying to find the love. Like I love 3D, but the like practical love of 3D again, because I was doing 3D at that company. But I was also like spending a lot of time doing other things like volunteering. So I didn't have the capacity to like phone it in and not try hard doing 3D at my job and then do passion projects on the side. So I would suggest it for people to like, particularly if you don't like your job, do passion projects so that you can still keep up your speed and your love for the specialty that you have. Because I've been working since then, after like getting through the PTSD of that, then getting back to like doing 3D at a high speed. because I don't want to get a job at a studio and then like be a bad show of like what I do professionally, and I've been doing professionally for 13 years. So
Mm.
that is my next long-term goal. It's not an end goal, but my next long-term goal is to get back being a 3D modeler.
Awesome. Awesome. For me, this season of and underemployment has made me lean back into the fact that once upon a time I had this dream that I wanted to just go to all these animation festivals as like a vlogger. And I'm like, I'm going to get back to that. So I'm going to be in California late April, right? For an event out there, which y'all gonna see on social media. And I'm gonna start giving that a spin. As you see, I'm posting more to YouTube. So it's like two end goals. I want to get back into the studio and continue my own career journey of working up that ladder and eventually end up in like a more creative producer. A dream would be that Jen and I are tag teaming and she's the creative exec and I'm the creative producer and we're like making things happen. And
I
then
want to have creative fights with you.
it's gonna be great. It's gonna be so awesome. People are gonna just want to work with us and things are gonna get made. And then I'm going to like a film festival in Canada and in somewhere Annecy and whatever stuff. And I'm just like vlogging and talking to people and still doing some of that stuff. And
Mm.
those are my two end goals, and then just enjoying life along the way. And that brings us to the end of this time here, this conversation. Let me put your stuff back on. So thank you everybody for watching. We had like a strong viewer count in my opinion the whole way through, and I really appreciate that. I was waiting to see it drop down to like 3 people, so I appreciate every single person that just stuck through this. I appreciate you guys for taking the time and just chatting and just making this first of many, many more of these type of things. I'm sure I'll have you guys on in various capacities. Both have been on the podcast. Deborah just once, Jen a bunch of times, and Jen will be on a bunch more whenever they release season 2 of What If, because I'm holding you to that. You're gonna be my guest host for
Yeah.
that. And if you guys like, which I believe, this office hours type of thing, I saw a comment here. What topics would you like me to cover? Because then I'm going to get the best people to have those conversations with, and it could be something just super cool and chill, like this. So follow the ladies on social media, comment, share this with your tribe, communities, people that you think could benefit from this. And I will see you guys very, very, very soon. Take care, everybody. I'm looking for like the end screen. And have a good evening, have a good rest of your week, and be safe, all that sort of stuff.